2020 has taught me a lot about professional wrestling, with having non-traveling shows occurring during a lockdown being very informative and exposing some of the frailties as well as some of the strengths of the industry. And what are some of these lessons that I learned? Well, they're the topic of this episode, because today... Before we begin, I want to give a big thank you to all of my supporters over on Patreon, like Alan Jolie, Edgar Perez, and Bob86. Thank you so much for all the help. Having this continuing situation that we're all still stuck in has definitely revealed a lot about wrestling in the past year, and so I figured that a video is probably the best way to document all of my inner reflections during this very strange time. And with that being said, let's just go ahead and get into it. I have previously stated that I felt that the rigorous schedule that WWE wrestlers are forced to maintain was probably a huge contributing factor to the seemingly constant string of injuries that keep on occurring. But alas, this year has proven that's probably not the case. With it being reported that some WWE wrestlers work over 200 days a year, and with WWE itself being very secretive about the exact amount of wrestling dates their wrestlers work, it did seem kinda suspicious and probably something that might not be up to par with what they should be doing. And when you look at it, aside from their weekly show of Raw or SmackDown, and sometimes both, and including a monthly pay-per-view, wrestlers would work numerous house shows in between, totaling quite a hefty workload. Now, common sense would dictate that since every match is a risk, the more matches you have, the more your odds go up of potentially getting injured. Right? Well, apparently that's not the case. With house shows being eliminated and wrestlers only working one show per week and occasionally a pay-per-view, WWE has not become an injury-free zone. Wrestlers are still getting hurt. Sure, it may or may not be to the exact same extent, but overall I think you get my point here. Furthermore, according to some old-timers, wrestlers used to wrestle even harsher schedules back in the day, wrestling every single day of the week and even sometimes multiple matches all in one night, and yet injuries weren't as much of a problem as they are now. The fast-paced, hard-hitting, stiff style that many WWE wrestlers are using is apparently a problem. And so, while it might be popular with many modern fans, it's still important to note that it comes at a cost. I didn't realize that WWE had a contractual obligation to only produce a very limited amount of taped episodes for both Raw and SmackDown. And I was also taken by surprise to find out that both Fox and the USA Network would give so little leeway to WWE even during these very specific circumstances. You could make all the "it's still real to me" jokes that you possibly want, but seriously, I didn't learn until this past year just how many professional wrestling fans seemingly have no idea what reality really is. I've gotten my fair share of flack from certain members of the IWC who are mad at me because I don't like the Firefly Funhouse match or the Dinner Debonair, as I find both of them to be completely unrealistic. And their retort for this is usually that the Firefly Funhouse is all psychological and that the Dinner Debonair is no different from The Rock playing his rock concert. To which I could not possibly disagree more. First, something that is all psychological and taking place in someone's head is completely unfilmable. You know that, right? I can't take a camera and record the mental images going on inside of someone's mind during a psychic battle. And on top of that, Bray Wyatt doesn't really have Professor X powers in real life either. And as for the difference between a concert and a musical, a concert is perfectly realistic. A person can sit down and play guitar and sing to an audience. A musical is a fictional world where it's perfectly normal to break into song and dance routines out of nowhere. Now sure, if they simply presented the Dinner Debonair as a musical performance and had it done on a stage, that would be a completely different story. But it was presented as if these two wrestlers were really at a real restaurant which magically broke away and turned into a choreographed dance routine. And yes, I know that professional wrestling is scripted too, but there is a very clear distinction between both of these worlds. Synchronized swimming is also choreographed. That doesn't mean that synchronized swimming is a version of professional wrestling. I said it in a previous video. I didn't think I had to explain this, but apparently for a small portion of the population, I do. I always knew that having live fans in attendance was tremendously important to professional wrestling, from being a source of revenue to being a driving force behind the workers' performance. However, in the overly rehearsed world of today's WWE, one would think that fan feedback has no bearing, but alas, that's apparently not true. With nothing more than the sounds of silence coming from the crowd, wrestling just sounds like a high-impact aerobics class. And with fake audio effects, it sounds just like a video game. Furthermore, when the audience is completely filled with plants, the crowd noises still tend to ring hollow. As real wrestling fans are not afraid to boo what they don't like, even if they're supposed to. Genuine fan reaction from someone who paid hard-earned money is always going to have the feel of a real demand for satisfaction, which does send information back to talent. Real workers adjust and can feel when the crowd is tuning out and what they're responding towards. And even if it doesn't change the booking right away, it still sends a clear message back to management. But now the internet is all promotions have to go by, which creates another problem unto itself. Let's make this clear. The internet does not speak for everyone. Not every wrestling fan is like us, where they'll go online in order to vent their frustration or sing the praises of professional wrestling. So, by only having the internet to go on, there is a huge section of the audience who aren't being heard, and without those voices in attendance in a capacity crowd, it looks like wrestling might just be worse for wear. My primary example for this would have to be Retribution. They, of course, had their issues right from the start. But WWE was nothing if not reactionary when it came to their booking. First, internet fans complained that they were too short, so WWE made them bigger. Then WWE toyed with the idea of turning them into a comedy act on social media, only to have fans then complain that the group were too ineffective and that they were supposed to be treated as a threat. Throughout their run so far, WWE added a plethora of NXT talent. The SmackDown hacker, who turned out to be Mustafa Ali, who then became their leader, made them exclusive to Raw, among all other things in an attempt to get the group over. WWE had nothing to go on but the internet, and apparently forgot that people mostly go online to complain, and that the internet isn't just one person that keeps changing its mind, but rather, when you give the whiners what they want, they will shut up, but then they get replaced by new complainers who don't like the new thing that you gave them, and thus, the cycle continues. If you try to silence all of your cyber critics, you'll get nowhere, which is exactly why Retribution became the muddle mess that it is. WWE was better off picking just one plan and sticking to it. I am aware of the company that Vince McMahon keeps. However, I had no idea that he had the clout that he does. I would never imagine that he had enough pull to get wrestling deemed as an essential business when just about everything else was shut down, which is something that even AEW was able to take advantage of as well. Vince McMahon is sure willing to shell out the big bucks just for a little bit of aesthetic interest and just to make things feel a little more important. For example, the WWE Performance Center is their building, and while they were initially performing out of there exclusively, they felt the need to leave their home and pay for another venue in order to host the Thunderdome, which is even stranger since NXT has almost the same exact setup. And yes, at first the Thunderdome did give a boost to the ratings, and it did help the overall feel of the show, as well as allegedly helping morale, but from a financial point of view, they easily could have done both Raw and SmackDown along with the pay-per-views all in the Capitol Wrestling Center with NXT. And I think it would have been just fine, as well as being more cost-effective. I actually am surprised that Vince McMahon was willing to shell out so much cash when he didn't have to for something that was really just a trivial difference, especially considering all of the employees that he released just in order to save a little bit of money. Well, there you go, just some of the things that I learned in professional wrestling this year. What did you learn? Let me know down in the comments, and please give this video a like and make sure that you're subscribed, as it really does help out the channel. I want to give a big thank you to my Patreon supporters, as well as thanking you for watching. And as always, Dave knows.